Ava slid into the back seat of the yellow taxi, barely glancing at the driver as she pulled out her notebook. Another long night, another deadline. As a journalist, she had spent years chasing the next big story: politicians, scandals, high-profile interviews. But tonight, she felt drained, uninspired. The driver adjusted his mirror and asked, "Long day, miss?" She sighed, still scribbling in her notebook. "Yeah, just trying to find a story worth telling." The driver chuckled. "Plenty of stories in this city. You just have to listen." Ava smirked, used to small talk. "You must hear a lot of them, huh?" The driver nodded. "Oh yes. People talk when they think you're just the guy behind the wheel." Something about the way he said it piqued her curiosity. She shut her notebook and leaned forward. "What's the most interesting story you've ever heard?" The driver hesitated. Then, after a moment, he said, "Mine." His name was Yusuf. Years ago, back in his home country, he had been a well-respected professor, teaching literature at a prestigious university. He loved words, poetry, the way stories shaped people's hearts. But when war erupted, everything changed. His university was shut down. His students scattered. He and his wife had to flee, leaving behind their home, their memories, their dreams. Ava listened, her pen frozen above the paper. "You were a professor?" Yusuf smiled sadly. "In another life. Now, I drive people around, listening to their stories instead of teaching them." Ava was stunned. "Why didn't you try to teach again?" He let out a soft laugh. "Do you know how hard it is to start over in a new country? My degrees meant nothing here. I had no connections, no opportunities. At first, I was angry. I had spent my life building something that was taken away in an instant." He paused at a red light, turning to face her. "But then, I realized, I still had something no one could take away. My love for stories. So I decided, if I couldn't teach in a classroom, I'd teach in the streets. One ride at a time." Ava stared at him. "How?" "I listen," he said simply. "I talk to people. I share what I know. Sometimes, it's advice. Sometimes, it's a poem. And sometimes, it's just a kind word to remind them they're not alone." By the time they reached Ava's destination, she felt something she hadn't in years: inspiration. As she stepped out of the taxi, she looked at Yusuf and asked, "Have you ever thought of telling your own story?" He smiled, shaking his head. "My story isn't important. I am just a taxi driver now." Ava gripped her notebook. "No, you're not. You're a storyteller. And this time, your story deserves to be told." That night, instead of writing about politicians and scandals, Ava wrote about Yusuf, the professor who lost everything but still found a way to teach, even from the driver's seat of a taxi. And when it was published, his story changed lives. Moral: your value isn't defined by a title or a job. It's in how you touch people's lives, no matter where you are. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.